Jason Cole woke up the way no one should, ripped from his sleep by a blinding blue light that filled his cabin like a lightning strike. One moment he was nestled under a thick blanket in his quiet wooden home in the Rockies, the fire in his stove slowly fading, and the next he was floating, choking on nothing, his body yanked upward into a freezing metal world. His heart thudded against his ribs as his back slammed into a cold, hard surface. The room around him looked like something out of a nightmare. Shadows flickered and sleek insect-like creatures loomed over him, clicking and chittering in a language he didn't understand. They were tall, with spiny limbs, eyes like wet, black marbles and skin that shimmered like oil. One leaned over and hissed, "Subject secure, human acquired." Jason stared at it with narrowed eyes. He didn't scream or cry. He didn't beg. He simply took a slow breath, scanned the room, and found what they hadn't expected. Opportunity. A metal tray sat beside him, filled with tools that gleamed under the cold lights. A scalpel, long and sharp, caught his attention. They thought he was like the others, terrified, docile, weak. But Jason had spent 10 years in the U.S. Army, 2 of them in the nastiest parts of the world. He'd lived through gunfights, jungle storms, betrayal, and worse. Compared to that, this was just another mission. The restraints around his arms weren't sealed tight enough. He twisted his left wrist, popped his thumb, and slipped his hand free. His fingers snatched the scalpel in one quick motion. Before the aliens could react, he'd slashed through the cables on his right arm and rolled off the table. One guard stepped forward, raising what looked like a stun rod. Jason lunged. The scalpel sliced the creature's wrist and it shrieked, dropping its weapon. Another moved in. Jason kicked it in the knee joint, grabbed the fallen rod, and slammed it into the alien's chest. Electricity lit up its body, and it collapsed in a twitching heap. "Contain him," one of the scientists screeched. Doors slid open, and more guards stormed in. Jason didn't run. He charged. A burst of movement caught the guards off guard. He was fast. Too fast. His military training kicked in like muscle memory. He moved low, ducked under a wild swing, and cracked one alien across the jaw with the butt of the rod. Sparks burst from the overhead lights. The room erupted into chaos. Alarms started to blare, the ceiling flashing red. Jason snatched a dropped energy blade from one of the fallen creatures and backed toward the exit, panting. His body ached from the struggle, but his eyes stayed sharp. He glanced back one last time at the room. Medical equipment scattered, 2 guards unconscious, and 1 scientist trembling in a corner. "You're gonna regret picking me," he muttered. Then he turned and ran, the energy blade humming in his hand. Somewhere deep in the ship, klaxons roared and mechanical voices began barking warnings. Jason had no idea where he was, what these things wanted, or how far from Earth he might be, but none of that mattered. What mattered was survival. What mattered was making them pay for ever thinking they could take him without consequences. And as he disappeared into the halls of the alien vessel, leaving behind a room full of broken bones and scattered tools, it was clear. This abduction had just gone horribly, horribly wrong. Jason moved fast through the narrow metal halls of the alien ship, his boots pounding against the floor with every step. The lights above him blinked red as alarms howled through the corridors. Alien voices shouted in their strange tongue, echoing off the walls like the growls of wild animals. He didn't know where he was going, but years of combat experience had taught him one thing: keep moving, never stop, and find high ground or escape. He passed strange chambers filled with glowing tanks, floating creatures, and machines that hissed steam. The ship wasn't built for humans. The ceiling was too low in some places, too high in others, and everything smelled like burnt wires and something rotten. He didn't stop to study the ship. He kept his eyes sharp, always looking for more weapons, exits, or weak points. The energy blade in his hand pulsed softly, its edge glowing blue. He gripped it tighter. His shoulder burned from where one of the guards had grazed him, but pain only made him sharper. He turned a corner and came face to face with a patrol of 3 guards. They were armored this time, taller than the first ones, with strange rifles crackling with energy. They pointed their weapons, expecting him to freeze. Instead, Jason dropped to a crouch, rolled under their line of fire, and sliced one's leg as he came up. The alien roared and fell. Before the others could react, Jason drove his elbow into another's chest plate and stabbed the blade into its side. The third alien backed up trying to raise his gun, but Jason hurled the blade, striking it in the neck. The alien dropped, gurgling. Jason yanked the blade back from the fallen body and kept moving. He was breathing hard now, blood smeared on his arms, his shirt torn. His heart pounded, but his mind was steady. He needed a plan. As he ducked into a side passage to catch his breath, he spotted a window, long, curved, and thick like submarine glass. Beyond it, the black of space stretched out forever, stars like dust across the void. Below the ship, he saw something that made his gut twist. Earth, his home, far, far away like a memory. The blue planet was small, distant, but still glowing with light. He hadn't just been taken to another country or orbit. He was deep in space, maybe even in another system. A voice echoed above him, this time in a language he could understand, translated by the ship's systems. Human subject is dangerous. Target is loose. Capture alive if possible. Terminate if not. Jason laughed under his breath. Good luck with that. He followed the hallway, deeper, passing rows of sealed doors and control panels. Finally, he found something that looked like a command deck, a place with chairs, consoles, and a central display that showed different rooms in the ship. Cameras, controls, escape pods. He scanned the display fast. Then he saw it. Hangar bay. His eyes lit up. Ships. A way out. But between him and that hangar were dozens of guards, pressure-locked doors, and traps he didn't understand. He didn't care. He now had a goal. He memorized the map, smashed the display to leave no trace, and sprinted out. He moved like a ghost, fast and angry. He passed broken walls, stunned guards, and confused engineers. The ship's systems were trying to contain him, but they weren't built for something like Jason. The aliens had spent centuries abducting weak, scared humans. They had no idea what a trained soldier with a bad attitude could do. He was something they couldn't study in a lab. He was chaos. He was a storm inside their perfect machine. And as he neared the hangar, slicing through two more guards without slowing, Jason felt a fire building in his chest. Not fear, not even anger, but purpose. They made a mistake when they took him. And now this entire ship was going to learn exactly why. Jason burst into the hangar like a hurricane, sweat dripping from his face, breath sharp in his throat. But his grip on the energy blade never wavered. The hangar was massive, stretching far into the distance, filled with sleek alien ships that hovered gently above the metal floor. Cranes moved along the ceiling, and engineers shouted as lights flashed red overhead. The moment he entered, alarms shrieked louder, and every alien head snapped toward him. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos exploded. Security drones buzzed to life and zipped through the air, energy blasts lighting up the darkness like fireflies. Gone mad. Jason dove behind a crate, bolts slamming into the metal around him. He rolled out, grabbed a metal bar from the floor, and hurled it at one of the drones. It hit square in the core and exploded in sparks. Jason dashed forward, weaving between crates and strange machines, each one labeled in a language he couldn't read. His eyes locked on a small, fast-looking ship near the edge of the bay. It was shaped like a bird's beak with narrow wings and a clear cockpit. He ran toward it, ducking fire, sliding across the floor under another drone, then slamming his shoulder into a guard who tried to block him. They wrestled. The alien hissed and tried to claw him, but Jason punched it square in the jaw, then shoved it aside. He leapt up into the ship, sealed the hatch behind him, and looked around. The controls were glowing symbols, but Jason wasn't. Helpless. He'd spent time working with captured enemy vehicles during his service. Patterns mattered more than language. He recognized throttle levers, energy levels, stabilizer readings. He pressed buttons, flipped switches, and the ship began to hum with power. Outside, more guards rushed toward him. One raised a launcher. Jason didn't hesitate. He slammed his palm on the ignition rune. The ship roared as energy surged through it, the hangar lights flickering under the power spike. With a snarl, he gripped the flight controls and yanked hard. The ship lifted, spinning slightly, then rocketed forward. The launcher fired, but the missile hit another crate as Jason veered left, speeding toward the sealed hangar doors. The ship's sensors beeped, detecting the barrier still in place. Jason narrowed his eyes. "Open, damn it," he muttered, jabbing at the panel. Nothing. He had seconds. Then he remembered. Every hangar had emergency override systems. He spun the ship toward the control tower above the bay, aimed the forward cannon, and fired. The tower exploded in a flash of orange light. The force from the blast triggered the emergency failsafe. The hangar doors split open, groaning as they peeled apart. Wind screamed through the room as atmosphere vented into space. Jason pushed the throttle forward. The ship screamed as it launched through the gap and into the stars. He didn't stop to look back. Alien ships followed almost instantly. 3 sleek fighters curved into pursuit, firing green bolts that flashed past his cockpit. Jason gritted his teeth and rolled the ship to the side, diving into a thick asteroid field nearby. The rocks loomed huge and deadly, but he dodged them, with a mix of luck and instinct. One alien ship wasn't so lucky. It clipped a spinning rock and exploded into bright debris. Jason curved around a massive chunk of frozen stone, then brought his ship behind one of the others. He fired. The bolt hit clean and the alien ship spiraled off into the black. One left. It was fast, too fast for him to chase directly. Jason pulled back into a tight spiral, letting the ship swing around a larger asteroid, then cut the engines for half a second. The pursuing ship overshot. Jason reignited his engines, flipped around, and blasted the last fighter before it could react. Silence returned to space. Only the stars watched now. Jason sat back in the pilot's seat, breathing hard. His hands shook. His body was bruised. But he was alive. Somehow he'd survived a full-scale abduction, escaped a warship, stolen a fighter, and destroyed 3 ships alone. And he wasn't finished yet. He didn't know where he was, how far Earth really was, or what galaxy he had stumbled into. But he did know one thing. The aliens had made the worst mistake of their lives. They picked the wrong man to abduct, and now he was free, armed, and angry in their territory. And if they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. Jason drifted in the alien fighter, the stars spinning slowly outside the canopy while his mind ran faster than ever. He had no food, no water, and no idea how to get back to Earth, but none of that scared him. What worried him more was the blinking alert on the dashboard. He was being tracked. A soft hum vibrated through the controls and the ship's system projected a small hologram, a red triangle blinking, moving in his direction. Another ship, maybe more. They weren't finished with him yet. He cursed under his breath and turned, the fighter toward a nearby planet, a dusty red world with thick clouds and scattered metal dots in orbit. The alien warship must have called for backup, and now patrols were spreading through the system to trap him. Jason didn't run. He angled his flight path toward the largest orbiting station, a ring-shaped fortress glowing with blue shields. If they were expecting a scared human to run and hide, they were in for a surprise. He turned the ship's signal jammer to full, masked his energy signature, and dropped low, slipping between defense satellites like a ghost. Inside the station, alarms didn't ring. Yet. Jason found a docking port on the underside, still open. It looked abandoned, as if used only for cargo or maintenance. Perfect. He landed fast and silent. The moment the ship touched down, he jumped out, gripping his energy blade and a pulse rifle he'd pulled from the ship's locker. He moved with purpose, entering through a side hatch and into the quiet belly of the station. The halls were dim and lined with alien piping, the air humming with low power. He passed tanks filled with bioliquid, drones floating idle, and panels that flickered with half-working code. Jason moved past it all until he reached a control hub. From here, he could hear distant footsteps, guards coming. He didn't have much time. He hacked into the terminal using a knife tip to pry off the cover, exposing raw wires. He twisted 2 together, shorted a third, and watched the screen flicker to life. Maps, security feeds, power grids. And then he saw it. One of the alien commanders, high-ranking by the way others bowed to him, speaking into a comm about the human threat. They had labeled him a Class 7 danger, a walking contagion, an anomaly. Jason grinned at that. Then he saw the bigger picture. They weren't just hunting him. The aliens had files, videos, reports, even old satellite images of Earth. Their abduction of him wasn't an accident. It was the start of a test, a probe. They wanted to study human resistance, learn how to defeat Earth's defenses, and plan a large-scale invasion. Jason's blood went cold. This was bigger than him. Much bigger. He copied the files into the stolen fighter system, planted 3 timed charges on the station's mainframe, and ran. He didn't get far before the guards spotted him. Gunfire lit up the corridor behind him, green bolts sizzling past his head. He dove through a side hatch, rolled under a pipe, and came out behind 2 soldiers. He didn't hesitate, blade through one, shot the second. He sprinted through twisting halls, alarms now screaming, red lights bathing everything in emergency glow. The ship was already powering up when he slid into the cockpit. He lifted off the second the hatch closed. Behind him, the station exploded. First, a pulse of light, then a thunderclap of fire that shook space itself. The data was safe. But now the entire alien fleet would know he was more than an escaped subject. He was a threat to their war. Jason flew into a debris cloud, switched off the engines, and let the wreckage mask his trail. His hands gripped the controls tighter than before. He had proof of the invasion plan. He had a working alien ship. And most of all, he had the one thing they couldn't stop, his will to fight. He knew Earth had no idea what was coming, no warning. But he would give them one. He would fly across galaxies if he had to. Burn every alien station that tried to stop him. And if the stars stood in his way, he'd make them move. Because Earth might have looked weak from space, but they'd taken the wrong man. And now he was coming home, ready to light the fire that would wake the whole world. ChatGPT said, Jason pushed the stolen fighter to its limit, the engines burning hot as he shot through uncharted space, racing toward the edge of the alien-controlled sector. The stars became streaks as the ship entered faster-than-light mode. But even in the silence of the void, Jason felt the weight of the galaxy pressing in. He hadn't slept in over a day. His body ached, his wounds throbbed. But his eyes never left the scanner. The aliens knew now, not just about him, but about Earth. They would be preparing fleets, weapons, maybe worse. The data he had stolen was proof of it. Diagrams of Earth's cities, weaknesses in human satellites, even test simulations of a planetary invasion. He couldn't let them reach Earth first. Just as he began to relax for a moment, a sharp beep hit his ears. Multiple signals, fast-moving. A fleet was dropping out of warp directly in front of him. Jason cursed and yanked the controls sideways, pulling the ship into a sharp arc. Laser fire flashed through the darkness as 3 cruisers opened fire. He dove through the barrage, rolling and twisting between shots, the fighter's hull groaning under the pressure. He fired back, short, sharp bursts that clipped the wings of 2 incoming interceptors, but there were too many. They had known his path. They were waiting. One cruiser fired a plasma net, a wide trap of glowing energy that curved in space like a spiderweb. Jason tried to bank away, but it was too close. The net struck his ship, power surging through the systems, shutting down lights and engines. He drifted, powerless, while the enemy moved closer, like vultures circling a wounded animal. But Jason didn't panic. He climbed out of the seat, grabbed a small pack from the storage bay, and kicked open the emergency hatch. The void waited outside, stars cold and silent. But Jason was already leaping, straight toward the nearest cruiser. The emergency suit's thrusters kicked in, guiding him across the open vacuum. It was a dangerous move, insane even, but he had one shot. The alien ship's outer hull grew larger and larger until he slammed into it, magnetic boots holding him in place. He moved fast, crawling toward a side panel, slicing it open with his blade. Sparks flew. He yanked out wires, twisted them together, and forced a manual override. The airlock hissed open. Jason slipped inside. Alarms triggered instantly. but he was already moving through the narrow passageways, laying charges as he went. Guards poured in from both sides, tall, armored, glowing eyes, but Jason fought like a storm. His blade danced. His shots never missed. He was bleeding, limping, but unstoppable. He made it to the reactor core just as more enemies surrounded him. There was no time left. He slammed the last charge in place, twisted the timer dial, and ran. The explosion shook the cruiser as he launched himself through a maintenance chute, falling hard into the fighter bay. With smoke behind him, he jumped into one of their docked interceptors, hacked the controls with the same brutal method, and blasted out of the bay seconds before the ship collapsed in fire. The other cruisers started chasing him again, but now he was angry. He spun the new interceptor around and flew straight at them. He dodged their weapons, skimmed the surface of their armor, dropped bombs into their engines. One by one he crippled their ships, not with brute force but with speed, fury, and surgical strikes. When the last cruiser finally turned and fled, Jason let them go. He was shaking, his suit torn, chest heaving from the lack of air and heat. But he was alive, and now he had a clear path. The last checkpoint between him and Earth's sector was gone. He checked the star map, 2 jumps away. If the ship held together, if his body didn't collapse, he'd make it. And when he did, he would bring more than just a warning. He would bring rage, fire, and a reason for Earth to stand tall. They had taken him thinking he was weak. They thought humanity was soft. But now the galaxy knew. Earth's worst target had become its most dangerous enemy, and the real fight was only beginning. Jason's ship tore out of warp just beyond Earth's orbit, the pale blue planet rising like a beacon in the dark. For a moment, he forgot the blood dried on his suit and the sting of bruises across his body. He had made it. Earth was still here, still breathing, but peace never lasted long. His stolen alien interceptor triggered every defense system Earth had. Early warning satellites lit up, ground stations sent urgent broadcasts, and within seconds, 2 human fighters locked onto him. Jason tried to speak through the comms, but the alien systems weren't translating. He pulled up the emergency beacon embedded in the ship's core, hoping it would link to old Earth tech. It sparked once, twice, and finally blinked green. A voice came through. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself or be destroyed." Jason slammed a fist on the dashboard. "This is Jason Hunt, Earthborn, abducted from Oregon 6 days ago. I'm coming in hot with enemy data and a message. Stand down and listen." Silence. Then, "Jason, confirm biometric code." He pricked his thumb on the scanner. A long pause. Then the fighters pulled back. "Escort inbound. Hold position." Relief almost dropped him into unconsciousness, but there was no time to rest. A human cruiser arrived minutes later and docked with his ship. Medics pulled him out, stunned at his injuries. Officers swarmed him with questions, but he didn't waste time. "They're coming," he said. "They planned this. They know everything. I have the files." He handed over the data core, and suddenly the room shifted. Every expression turned cold and focused. High Command was notified. Jason was moved to a secure war room deep under Antarctica, the heart of Earth's strategic command. His files were decrypted, reviewed, and confirmed. It was all real. The aliens had mapped Earth's continents, identified weak points, even practiced planetary invasion routes using captured data. Humanity wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was a target. As military leaders debated, Jason stood at the edge of the table, still bandaged, still sore, but burning with fire. "They think we'll kneel," he said. "They think Earth is soft, that we'll panic. But we're not just defending a rock, we're defending every species they've stepped on. This is bigger than survival. It's about standing up." His words hit hard. The vote was unanimous. Earth would not wait to be invaded. They would strike first. In less than 6 hours, the defense fleets were recalled, alliances with Mars, and Titan outposts activated and weapons from long-closed bunkers brought back online. For the first time in centuries, the world's armies stood united, not against each other, but against something worse. Jason was given a new ship, a custom, human-built warfighter, sharp as a dagger and fast as thought. He named it Retribution. At his side flew Earth's elite. Pilots, engineers, tacticians, all handpicked for what was now called Operation Thunderwake. Their goal wasn't just to warn the galaxy, it was to send a message. Humanity doesn't fall quietly. They jumped into alien territory using the same route Jason had escaped from. But this time they weren't hiding. They blew through border patrols, hacked enemy satellites, and dropped fire on key supply routes. Planets that once thought Earthlings were myths now watched as alien stations exploded above their skies. Jason led the charge, his fighter moving like lightning, cutting enemy vessels apart with precision. In every battle, he saw fear grow in the eyes of his enemies. Not because he was strong alone, but because they now saw what one angry human could ignite. He wasn't the only one anymore. He was the spark, and Earth was the fire. Alien war councils scrambled to regroup. Their confidence was gone, their networks shaken, and still Earth's forces pushed forward, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to prove that no matter how far away you were, no matter how strange your language or shape, if you tried to break Earth, you would bleed for it. And in the middle of it all, Jason flew with one goal: to show them they had chosen the wrong planet and the wrong man to mess with. The enemy stronghold loomed ahead, a massive fortress orbiting a dead moon, glowing red with weapon heat and defense grids that covered every angle. This was the core command center of the alien armada, the place where the attack on Earth had been planned, where Jason's abduction had been ordered, and where the leaders now hid, believing their power was still enough to crush a single angry world. Jason's fleet dropped out of warp with no hesitation. Ships shaped like blades, like thunderbolts, like iron fists poured into the system. Weapons ready, Earth's banner flew proudly on every hull, and Jason's fighter, Retribution, was at the head, its engines burning blue. "This is for Earth," Jason said into the comms, his voice calm, steady, and cold. "This is for every species you stepped on. This is your answer." And then the sky lit up. Missiles flew in waves, lasers carved through darkness, and shields sparked under impact. The fortress answered with everything it had. Hundreds of alien ships swarmed like hornets, trying to flank, trying to push the humans back. But Earth's forces didn't bend. They moved with purpose, with fury. For every human ship that fell, 2 alien ships were torn apart. Jason fought at the center of the storm. His hands moved without thought, his body reacting faster than fear. He flew through blasts, through wreckage, through screaming alarms, firing back with deadly aim. He wasn't just a pilot now, he was vengeance in motion. Enemy fighters locked onto him, chased him through tight maneuvers, but he flipped and spun and blasted them from the sky. Even when a plasma hit cracked his side armor, he kept flying, smoke trailing behind him. He didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The humans broke through the outer ring, pushing toward the core of the fortress. Jason led a strike team straight for the main reactor. As they flew in, enemy fire filled the corridors, tearing into walls, vaporizing ships. But Jason dodged, dove, and fired his way through. He reached the center and saw it. Huge, pulsing, a heart of stolen power. The alien leaders were there too, inside glass chambers, staring down at him with cold, angry eyes. "You shouldn't have come," one of them said through a distorted broadcast. "You've doomed your people." Jason landed hard, kicked open the hatch, and stepped into the control chamber. "No," he said, his voice like steel. "You did that the moment you came to Earth." He pulled the core destabilizer from his back, a human-made device, untested, unstable. He slammed it into the control node. The alarm screamed. The ground shook. The fortress began to collapse from within. He turned to run but was met by alien guards. They attacked in silence, blades flashing, claws slashing, but Jason fought like a beast. He moved with speed, with rage, with the memory of every human they had taken. When it was over, he stood bleeding, exhausted, the floor covered in sparks and bodies. He hit the last switch and bolted to his ship. His fleet was already pulling back, calling him to retreat. Jason blasted out of the fortress just as it exploded behind him. A sunburst of flame and metal that lit up the whole system. Silence followed. Then the cheers. Across every channel, human voices rose. They had done it. The core was gone. The leaders were dead. The invasion was over. Jason leaned back in his seat, eyes half closed, every nerve screaming with pain. But inside there was peace. Not because the war was won, others might rise later, but because Earth had proven itself. They had come together. They had fought back. And they had made the galaxy listen. When Jason returned home, the world stood for him, not just as a soldier, but as the one who reminded them who they were, a planet of fire, of heart, of stubborn fighters who didn't break. Jason never asked for thanks. He didn't give speeches. He just looked up at the stars and smiled. If they ever came again, they'd know better, because Earth's worst target had become its strongest shield. And in the silence between stars, that legend would never fade.